going to stand next to the tower.
هون زي المفعال ماني طلع الريحان
قاعد والله فاهم انه يسافر.
Very good house. See what I talked about before when I was talking about the three floors and only 2 floors. So you can see half of the first floor is buried on the rail. You have a 3rd floor which is only half because it's an attic, and there you go. How it works. Yes, exactly. And that's why you can build it in the technology of factory. Just note, yes, another full floor, and of course there is an entrance to it. Well, you saw the staircase going down on the other house, so that's exactly the same. Just note where we are. This is the Alte Lyceum. So yes, the old school. We kind of like close the circle, and I'll say a few words about what happened to the Germans and why they're not here, and then we're gonna go and see the community center. Okay, Yofi. So. In 1978, which is many years after the Germans were all gone, there was a lady, an old lady, Jewish lady named Hannah Mandel, who happened to live in the house that we saw on 16 Emek Rafaim. Remember the Christian Imberger house, 1877? Good. So she was very old. She was a Holocaust survivor. She came all by herself after the war, and she lived in that house when she was old. In 1978, she was no longer able to go out of the house because she was incapable. And that was the first time for her to agree to bring a television into the house. She was against it her entire life. So she said, I have to do something if I am stuck in the house. So she bought a television, and she asked the guy who brought it over to go up to put the antenna over. Okay, so he was the first person probably to go up into the attic in order to put the antenna on top, and he was shocked to find the attic in the Imberger family's house filled up with stuff that really amazed him. I want to show you just a photo of some of them. A knife that belonged to a Nazi officer saying blood and honor, and the uniform of a Nazi officer too. As you can see, lots of stuff that belonged to Nazis. Now I remind you that poor Hannah Mandel was a Holocaust survivor. She had this on her head for so many years. She was completely shocked. And then all the questions started to be asked. What happened? I mean, why are there not other Nazi artifacts in the attic? And then there was a big wow about it in the country, where Haaretz, the newspaper, decided to interview a guy, an old guy named Chaviv Knaan, who happened to be a Jewish soldier in the British police in Jerusalem during the British Mandate period. And they published this article, which is in Hebrew. I'm going to translate it to you. It is called Ruchot Be'emet Refaim, Ghosts in the Valley of Rephaim. This is, of course, kind of like playing with the word, because Rephaim in Hebrew are also ghosts. Okay, so this was published in Haaretz. If you guys look for it, you want to translate it. It's from August 25th, 1978. So I'm not going to quote the whole thing. I'm just saying this is what Chaviv Knaan told the reporter, the journalist, when he was interviewed. And he said, he described how he was, just a new Jewish officer in the police, in the British police in Jerusalem, 1938. And he was sent to guard this neighborhood. He was in charge of this neighborhood. So he said, about an hour after I arrived to the station, I went to a short tour around the beautiful neighborhood of the German colony. Every house was so beautifully, had a beautiful garden in the front, and I was very impressed with the 3 generations of Germans living in Jerusalem. But when I looked around and I saw through the open windows, on the walls of the houses, the pictures of the Reich
Chancellor.
He says manigim, leaders, and of course the biggest one was of Hitler. And on the front balconies, I saw little flag of swastika folded. I was so shocked. I did not understand what I'm seeing, and I saw that when the tenants, when they saw me and noticed that I was Jewish, they were not so happy. When the time passed, I noticed many things that happened here, which the British completely ignored. So, for example, when I said that I saw little youngsters of the German colony that belonged to the Hitler Jugend, which was the youth movement in German, but also had a branch here. I saw them practicing in the back of Katamon. They were not so far from here. Everybody was laughing at me and said, no big deal, these are scouts. And when I told them that I see them yelling Heil Hitler here and there whenever they see me passing by, they say, no, they just want to tease you, don't worry about it. But I saw, when the time passed, I saw the minority of the Germans in the land of Israel so crazy about the fear and how they are listening to the radio and are so thrilled with every quote that is quote from Hitler. So he already felt that something really bad is happening here, and I'm just saying, I'm asking this question of how come he was the only one. I mean, come on, the Fast family put on the swastika flag in 1938 on their hotel. Nobody says anything. We have to remember that in 1938 nobody knew what we already know. Okay, so they said that there's this crazy guy in Germany doing whatever he's doing, but you know what? Today we have, I don't know, Putin. I don't want to into parliament. I'm just saying there are crazy people leading huge countries, very strong countries in the world. We're like, Beseda, what can you possibly do, right? Nobody saw where it was leading. But then a year passed. September 1939, when the Second World War started. I want to remind you that it happened on September 1st, 1939, right? When Germany invaded Poland. 3 days later, the Brits got into the war. Now, the country was ruled by the British. So all of a sudden, all the Germans in Palestine were now enemy citizens, right? So the decision was to get all of them together and move them to two centers, concentration camps. I'm sorry, but this is the word that they used. One in Sarona, next to where Tel Aviv today, and the second for the northern communities, colonies in Bethlehem, the northern Galilee, Bethlehem. So the army, the British army, and the British police had to go into the colonies in order to arrest the people. Here is something that Chaviv Knan told the reporter of Haaretz in 1970. He said, a few minutes after the government, the Prime Minister of Britain joined the war in the September 3rd, 1939, Herman Imberger, remember the guy with the white pants living in that house that we were standing next to? Hannah Mandel's house. So he was the one of the many German citizens that were arrested in Jerusalem. He says before that now we know, in 1978, he says now we know that they belong to Herman Imberger, who was a very, respectable architect in Jerusalem, but also a Nazi officer, which nobody knew. So he said then in 1939, I was no longer posted in the German colony, but since I was there for almost a year and I knew all the corners, I knew all the people, I was asked to join the police troops in order to go and arrest everyone. So I'm going to go to the part that I want to quote. He said, we rang the bell, the Imberger house, but nobody answered the door. So it was not locked, so we went inside, and we were surprised to see nobody in the house. I went into the main hall, and I saw, obviously, the picture of Hitler on the wall. So I saw this picture for over 2 years on the wall, but I could not do anything. But now I could. So I went to this picture, I took it off the wall, and I threw it to the floor, which made the glass break all completely. The glass was all over the door, and I looked at the other officers, the other non-Jewish British officer. They were all just like looking at me, smiling. But then I heard this yell right behind me with a strong voice saying, "How dare you!" At the entrance to the hall, I saw Herman Imberger standing there, shaking, all white, and he's his eyes were very, very upset. I went to him, I held him, and I said, this is the last time where a picture of Hitler would be hung on a wall in Jerusalem. So that's how it ended. I mean, all the German citizens were taken to these two centers, and they were held there along the